Squatting can be very challenging for some, especially those trying to get it right and to not hurt themselves as they're doing it. Or if you feel tweaks and your back hurting or your hips pinching, then squatting can be challenging. And what I'm going to go over in this video is 3 mistakes that I see people making with squats. This can impact your back, it can impact your neck, it can impact your hips, it can impact your ankles, and how much range of motion you actually think you need there. Let's get into it. So number one is doing a stripper booty or trying to keep your chest up too much. Everybody talks about with a squat, your chest wants to be more vertical. Yes, more vertical, not vertical. And this plays a role into some of your anatomy too. If you have longer femurs, then you aren't going to be able to keep your chest as upright. If you have shorter femurs, then you will be able to keep your chest upright a little bit better. The other thing that plays into keeping your chest upright is your core strength and how much hip range of motion you have, how much ankle flexibility you have, how you're able to move your knees over your toes a little bit. And that gets people a little bit. Basically, what you want to think about when you're doing a squat, a deadlift, any move is that you want to feel balanced over your feet. Your feet are your base of support. Then you add load to it. As you're adding load to it, that changes your weight, your balance over your feet. If you add load in front of you, then that's going to allow you to shift your hips back and down a little bit better. That's going to allow you to actually keep your chest upright a little bit more. If you add load behind you, like a back squat, then this will make you want to tip your chest more forward because you have load more backwards from the orientation of where your feet are. And so to balance yourself over your feet, you have to have something that balances you forward. This comes into knees moving forward over top of your toes, because that definitely allows more weight forward. And then it also comes into play of how much you can keep your chest upright if you feel like you might fall backwards. And sometimes to keep your chest upright, people will do a compensation factor. They will do what's called, or what I call, a stripper booty, or what's named a lumbar hyperextension. And that's where they're swaying their low back to try to keep chest upright so much. This comes into play because it puts a lot more pressure on your back. It doesn't make your core actually work for you and make it strong and stable so you can use your hips and your hip muscles and your leg muscles as well as they need to be used. And you're going to use more of your back to support you and to do the movement pattern. Well, it's not made to do that. It's not made to be strong in that fact, especially in that position, to be able to handle those loads. Hence why you get some low back pain, hence why you don't use your glutes as much, and why you can actually develop more knee issues in this. Well, if you actually just tuck your tail a little bit, don't think about keeping your chest as upright, then you'll actually sink lower into your squat. You'll get deeper into it. Your hips will shift down and back. Your chest will shift forward a little bit, but it won't be so forward that you're thinking more of a deadlift. You'll still be balanced over top of your feet. Your knees and your hips will be bent, and then you can push the ground away and stand back up. This takes load off of your back and makes it feel so much more solid and stable. Number two comes into your stance. Some of us want to try to keep a narrow stance because that's what we see other people doing. We try to squat down, we don't get as deep, we have hips that pinch, and we think that we just need to work on our mobility. We think we need to work on getting our knees up to our chest more. We think we need to work on so many different things. Well, what if I just told you that you can widen your stance? It's okay. Sometimes you just need to be told the simple things that you can stand a little bit farther apart. Think about why we do squats. What's the purpose of them? It's to use our quads, our hips together, and it's to be able to load our body and to add more resistance to it, have better bone growth, and resistance train, strengthen our muscles. Well, we'll still strengthen our muscles. We'll probably get down even lower, deeper into our squat if we open up our feet just a little bit more. Sometimes it can be just as simple as the fact that our anatomy is different. There's an anterior torsion and retrotorsion of our femoral head as it comes in from our femur and goes in to the actual ball that attaches into your hip. This can either shift forward or backwards from your femur. And so if it shifts one or the other, then you're going to want to have a more narrow stance or you're going to want to have a more wide stance. And this in and of itself can limit how much that femur can go up or how much your hip wants to flex in a more narrow stance or in a wider stance. And so we're not talking like sumo squats here where you're way wide and forcing that move there, but we're just talking a little bit wider. It's okay, and do it. Make it happen. Toe out a little bit and be comfortable in your squats as you're doing it. The last mistake that I see being made is that we tend to push from our legs, our knees mostly, and not from our hips as equally whenever we're initially going from the deepest part of our squat up. This can lead to more of our low back taking the load, and it can mean that we are deadlifting, per se, our squat instead of squatting our squat. And what we want to happen is that as you're pushing the ground away, as you're pushing yourself up, then we straighten both your ankles, knees, and hips equally at the same time. Same thing as we're dropping, we bend all of these all of these joints at the same time, because we want to just drop down more vertically instead of dropping down more horizontally as we do in the deadlift type movement. The deadlift, we do our hips back and move into that hip hinge, and then we bend our knees to get down more towards the floor. And then as we're coming back up from the deadlift, we straighten our knees and then we hip hinge up. Whenever we're squatting, we want to make sure that we are not breaking it down, but doing everything together. And this will help you to not load your back quite as much whenever the weight is farther up on our body. That also changes the load for what your body has to do in those different positions. We want to stack the weight in your squat. We don't want to go forward with the weight in your deadlift. And that'll help you a ton when it comes to decreasing how much your back hurts or how much you get back stress whenever you're doing your squats. And same thing, it will help you with actually activating your glutes to help you get the squat movement to occur, because we want both your knees to straighten and your hips to straighten at the same time when you're doing your squat. I hope these are going to help you move forward and feel better in your squat. If you are looking for programs to follow, check out the link down below in the description, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Cheers, y'all.